Welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're tuning in today because, honestly, we're going to tackle something every single one of us deals with. We're going to figure out how to conquer that blurry, heavy mental fog of everyday overwhelm. You know exactly the feeling I'm talking about, right? You're just staring blankly at a blinking cursor, or you open your inbox and see, what, 400 unread emails, and your brain just starts buzzing with this kind of white noise. Well, using some really fantastic insights from Roya Bloom's recent writings on productivity and leadership, we're going to unpack exactly how you can take all that mental clutter and actually turn it into actionable control.
I want you to think fast for a second. When was the absolute last time you felt completely overwhelmed? Think about a really recent moment of intense stress. Maybe it was a crazy, chaotic day at work where literally everything is suddenly marked urgent and you realize, wait, I completely forgot to eat lunch. Your heart was probably beating a little faster, your mind was racing in 100 different directions, and the sheer volume of things to manage just felt totally unmanageable. Hold on to that feeling for just a second, because that right there, that is exactly what we are going to dismantle today.
When we're in that state of panic, what do we usually tell ourselves? We tend to fall back on these incredibly vague complaints. We say things like, man, I just have way too much to do, or this is so stressful. And hey, it feels incredibly relatable, right? But here is the harsh reality. Vague thoughts simply don't solve problems. Actually, internalizing these blurry, undefined complaints doesn't release the pressure at all. It literally amplifies your anxiety. Because you see, if you don't clearly define the problem, you almost always end up trying to solve the wrong one entirely. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is the golden rule we're unpacking today. It's called Kidlins Law, and it states, if you write down a problem clearly, half of the work is done. Now I know, it sounds remarkably simple, maybe even a little too obvious, right? But that is exactly what makes this principle so profoundly powerful. And it's also exactly why it gets so often ignored in our fast-paced lives. We skip the defining step and we just rush straight into the panic. So let's look at the actual psychological mechanism behind why this works. The moment we write down a problem, it physically and mentally transforms. Writing forces us to sort the signal from the noise. You're taking something that's basically just a blurry mental fog, like a ghost haunting your thoughts, and you are making the invisible visible. It becomes defined, it gets structure, and most importantly, it turns from absolute confusion into real, actionable next steps that you can actually start solving.
Let's move to Pillar 1 and see how this builds across different areas of our lives. Clarity in the workplace. Whether you're in the boardroom, chatting in team channels, or jumping on project calls, applying Kidlins Law is an absolute game changer. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is looking at what happens when problems go unwritten. The workplace suffers some very distinct symptoms. Have you ever been in a meeting that just spins in circles for an hour because no one actually wrote out what this specific issue is? Or, perhaps you've seen projects stall out entirely because the tasks were just assumed by the team rather than clearly articulated? Teams get trapped in this illusion of busyness instead of actually making progress entirely because they lose momentum to vague, undefined goals. So, how do the absolute best leaders cut through all that noise? Well, they ask their teams this exact question. What are we really trying to solve? But here's the kicker. They don't just ask it out loud. They demand the answer in writing. By forcing a team to distill a vague concept down into a concrete one-sentence summary, leaders instantly create alignment. You simply can't hide behind flashy business jargon when you're forced to write down the actual problem in one clear sentence. And I've got an immediate, highly actionable tip for you. The very next time you open a project document or start a new thread for a team discussion, type this exact phrase at the very top. Here's the problem we're solving. Seriously, try this tomorrow. It will completely change the trajectory of the conversation. Suddenly, everyone will be anchored to a visible, defined issue instead of their own abstract interpretations.
But hey, it's not just the workplace that benefits from this. Let's shift our focus to Pillar 2, smarter studying and learning. Students of all ages often find themselves totally stuck, and it's really crucial to realize that this isn't out of laziness. People usually stop studying or they start procrastinating simply because the challenges they are facing remain entirely abstract.
And this brilliantly illustrates that exact dynamic. Take a look at the abstract trap on the left. I don't understand this subject. I mean, that is not a solvable problem. That's just a brick wall. Now look at the defined problem on the right. I don't understand how to apply this formula in word problems. Boom, right there. By forcing ourselves to be highly specific and actually putting the hurdle into words, we immediately shrink the unknown. You really can't Google, "I don't understand this subject," but you can absolutely look up how to apply a specific formula to a word problem. To put this into practice, here is a highly practical, chronological routine for mastering any new subject. Step 1. Before you even start studying, write down one single sentence defining what you aim to learn. Step 2. The very moment you get stuck, stop and write out the specific obstacle. And Step 3. When you're reviewing, write down your key insights. Taking just a brief moment for reflection in writing isn't just taking notes. It is literally half the path to mastery. It builds the exact scaffolding your brain needs to retain complex information.
Finally, let's transition into our personal lives for Pillar 3, taming everyday anxiety. You see, Kidlins Law is so much more than just some tactical productivity hack for getting things done faster. When we apply it to our internal lives, it becomes deeply therapeutic.
Anxiety so often stems from undefined thoughts that are just swirling around endlessly in our heads. Therapeutic writing is the act of bringing form to formless anxiety by capturing it. And honestly, the amazing part is that the medium simply doesn't matter. You can use a beautifully structured journal, you can draw crazy mind maps, you can make bulleted lists, or you can literally just scribble sketches on a coffee shop napkin. The only thing that matters is that the invisible becomes visible. Once it's out of your head and onto a physical surface, you can finally look at it objectively. So, the crucial point is you can't fix what you haven't defined, and you can't control what you haven't captured. Let that sink in for a second. Whether it's a multi-million-dollar corporate project, a really tough college exam, or just a Sunday evening wave of anxiety, clarity is your ultimate gateway to control. I want to leave you with this incredibly empowering thought. A written problem is no longer a weight. It's a blueprint. Think about how liberating that paradigm shift actually is. Instead of feeling completely crushed by a heavy, invisible load of problems on your shoulders, the simple act of writing them down equips you with a blueprint to start building real solutions. You are no longer a victim of the overwhelm. You are the architect of the way out. Now that you know how to conquer the mental fog with Kidlins Law, it raises another really fascinating question about how we handle stress. What if pressure could be both your absolute enemy and your greatest superpower? In our next explainer, we are going to unpack the Yerkes-Dodson Law, and we'll explore the hidden rhythm of productivity. Until then, grab a pen, define your problems, and start building those blueprints. Thanks so much for joining me.